Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much. My name is Rufus Reed, and I have the great pleasure of introducing our guest artist this afternoon. He's a gentleman that I've known for many years, and I've watched him completely grow and become one of the major players on the bass instrument and composer as well. And without further ado, we're going to get started. These gentlemen are going to play for him, and I'm going to go get a box of Band-Aids. So please welcome John Patitucci.
These young folks are going to play some music for me, and I want to come down and listen so I can hear them well, like you guys. You want to introduce yourself so everybody knows?
Yeah, before or after?
Well, you can do it now. It'd be great.
My name is Alan Blanchard. I'm from Florida and Tennessee.
I'm Paul Peterson. I'm from Iowa.
I'm Joe Conticello. I'm from Connecticut.
I'm Ari Giancaterino. I'm from California.
I'm Felix Allen from North Carolina. One, two, 3, 4.
Thank you very much. This is Ornette Coleman's song, isn't it? Yes, sir. Is it When Will the Blues Leave or something? What's it? Yeah. So what I want you to think about is, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can talk about with this piece, but the way you've approached it was more like kind of straight down the pipe, straight ahead music, and it's really not that, actually. Have you listened much to that group with Charlie Hayden and Ed Blackwell? Have you listened much to that? So the way they approach the music is a little different. There's more space also. And that's one of the things I want to talk about first. Is it Joe? Joe. What I'd like to hear more of is a conversation, on your name? Felix. With Felix. You have to leave more room to establish dialogue here. And this is a tricky thing because you're listening to the soloist, right? One of my pet peeves, and when I teach all the time, is because I'm a bass player, I'm in the middle of this. So I really notice when there's this compositional hookup between the pianist and the drummer because they give food to the soloist. So you have to leave space, and it's kind of like, I liken it like this. Herbie Hancock is a master of this. If you listen to the way he leads and he follows at the same time. I've had the experience playing with him where I thought he knew what I was going to play before I played it, and he played the thing I was going towards. And at the same time, whatever I played, he would hear it immediately and turn a corner and change. So the dialogue is what I'm more interested in, which means you got to leave a lot more room, space for each other. In this tempo, too, a medium tempo, some people get on automatic pilot. They get in there and go, okay, we're going to chug along, and that's it. But Ornette's band didn't do that at all, actually. It didn't sound anything like that. So, not that, I mean, this tempo, and there's a lot of work you can do on the straight ahead part of this tempo with any tune that's a standard or from the Miles repertoire, with Cannonball and that band with Train. So the way you approached it sounded more like you were playing that music than Ornette's music. That's what I'm saying. So, and it's the kind of thing where you could play this. It's much looser, and it's not just this. So if you choose a tune like this, I want you to kind of embrace maybe another direction. Not that there's not still much to learn in the tempo that you did pick and the style you chose. The other thing, too, is I think if you project your sound a little bit more, you have some great ideas, and sometimes it sounds like you're having more of a private conversation. Sure. Yeah, because I like what you're playing, but I think sometimes you got to remember you got to give it to them, not just them. Yeah. And the other thing too is waves of dynamics. In this room, kind of demands it from you. You're playing some beautiful stuff. If you can have a wider dynamic, the guy to watch do this, I mean, there's a lot of guys, Billy Higgins and all kinds, there's traditionally so many great guys. In that generation, they had an ability to, or Roy Haynes, ability to play huge dynamic shifts within the same tune and within phrases and within solos, so that I think when you do that, it also creates waves in the music where you can always hear everybody, but you don't lack those mountaintop highs. But you know, you got to be careful, because if you just play up there all the time, you can obliterate the whole band in here. So you weren't doing that. But I would like to see a way to like sometimes bring it down, and there just needs to be a lot more interplay, you know? And for you, check out the way Charlie plays on a tune like this. It's very different from what most of us would think in that tempo. Because Ornette, you know, Fort Worth, the blues, bebop, he sounds like Charlie Parker sideways to me on a lot of the early records. It's really cool. He had an ability to. So can you try this a little bit with does that make any sense? You know, yeah, try like, and in the solos even, make space for each other. You know, it's easy to get on a track of 8 notes and an idea harmonically, but you have to be paying close attention so that you're leading and following. But you need to do that, you know, voice lead, have a melody line in your comp, but stretch it way out more instead of playing so much information. And also when you're blowing too, when you have a trio and it's just you playing with the trio, again, there's got to be more dialogue, you know. Because I want to hear what he's going to think after you play. It sounded more like you were playing a lot of things and then they were sort of accompanying you. I want to hear a little bit more interplay that way, especially on this kind of a song, you know. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you want the melody?
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, try to play the melody loose. Don't start walking when you play the melody. See if you can do that, and then maybe go into it or something like that. But I want to hear, I didn't hear much Ornette in that, you know. Yeah. Okay, now try it. Play it in a tempo, but stretch it a little, like listen to each other and do that and see if you can find each other, and then go into the tempo, maybe the second time or something. Just experiment with that. Okay. Go a step further. Don't count it off and play like make a gesture out of it. See if you can, because what I'm trying to do is get you guys to listen so hard to each other that you breathe together. I know I'm going to hold your feet to the fire about playing time and grooving and all that too, but right now I want, you chose an Ornette song, so I'm thinking I want to hear some of that. You can do it too, I know you can. You just got to let go a little bit. Okay. Try it one more time, but mess with the tempo. Don't stay like that. Move, but together. Okay. Try, Felix, don't play time. Play around the melody. And don't be afraid to go much faster and then come back. Because right now it still sounds like you're sort of basically playing the tempo. It's hard for you to let go of that for some reason, and I understand. But you should really listen to those records and the way they play. It's kind of magnificent how they worked all that out. It comes from, they know how to play time and they know how to swing and everything, but they're deliberately doing something a little different. Yeah. I'm not going to stop you anymore. Just go for it and play something, and then get into the solos. You can play time and do all that, but make more space and play a little bit more open and see what happens. Okay, let me show you something here, what you can do. You can still play downbeats and do things and open it up. Okay, start on your solo. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. this opens up a whole nother thing. In order to put holes in the rhythm, your time has to become such that you don't depend on the eighth notes or the constant thing to keep the tempo steady. That's another thing you should work on. For this tempo, this is one of those medium things. It's easy for it to kind of sag or even go forward. So that's another thing to practice. Practice, like when you're alone, playing either with you can play with a metronome on 1 or 3 or 2 or 4, and can you play ding 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 dong, be ding dong, boom, di 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 dong, di di dong, ding dong, boom, bing, ging, ging, ong, ing, ong, bam. So that everybody knows, you have to telegraph. Even if it's looser, you have to give them the form. That's our job. Even when we play, that's the common misconception about when you free it up. People think, oh yeah, no, the bass player is still checkpoint Charlie. Still, that's what they called Ron Carter, and that's it. But in the Miles band. So you still have to be able to guide people so they can be free. So the rest of them can be free. So I would say, play me another tune, but go investigate what that style that you just called the tune in is. Because it's not the Miles Quintet. It's some other kind of stuff. And it's great too. And it's fun. And you can explore it and you can get into it. I didn't discover it until much later. Like I got into it after a while and I thought, wow, this is something else. It's another thing. So it made me, here's the interesting thing, the takeaway from this is, whenever you have to break up time, your time has to be that much more clear and focused. So that we're not depending on the consistency of the time to keep us from losing the time. The time has to be in here and then we express it. But that takes some doing. So that would be a next place for you to go. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, next tune. Let's hear that. I'm curious what would happen if we did this a little slower. The other thing too is when you're playing the solo, try not to be so downbeat bound. In other words, like playing the phrases coming out on the downbeats all the time. The other thing you can do is try to open up more rhythmic motives than just harmonic. So, boop-dip, 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 bo-be-de-bo-do-bo-ba, ba-do-lo-de-do-de-da, ba-do-dit-da-dit-da-do-dit-da-do-lo-de-do, that's downbeat, sorry. So you know what I mean? So, in other words, instead of getting trapped into the same things, which we can easily do on a tempo like this, we can start our phrases too downbeat oriented. But again, this is you're gonna have to work on getting a little freer, and this is what we work on our whole lives. Rhythmically, this is something that I want to stress, because I think I've been one of my best friends in life for the last 20 years has been Danilo Perez, and we talk a lot about how people think about the harmonic language of bebop, but the rhythmic language of bebop was even more revolutionary, because the notes and the harmonies can be found in a lot of music, and the voice leading. I mean, Bird used to listen to Bach and all that, but what made it revolutionary was the rhythmic feel and the way they changed the syntax and the way those rhythms jump off the page. And rhythmically, being able to start in and out of a bar, anywhere in the bar. That's the kind of thing, you know, more transcription and more vocabulary rhythmically. Listen to Joe Henderson, the way he plays rhythmically. It's so uncanny how he darts around and makes you think, wow, what's he gonna do next, you know? How does he do that, you know? Or Bird, you put a Bird record on right now, and it still sounds revolutionary to me, rhythmically and harmonically. But if you put those notes and laid them on the floor without the breath of that rhythm, which brings them to life, those notes are melodic notes that you can hear in a lot of music. Of course, there's some blues and other things, but that's, again, a reflection of the emotion and the rhythmic input into the music. It's not purely melodic or harmonic. If you ever heard people play sort of some vocabulary of bebop, but they play it very straight, it doesn't sound like jazz anymore, it sounds like something else, right? So rhythmically, if you invest more time in that, you'll find the feeling. What we do a lot with Danilo is we talk about the 6/8 feeling that informed the swing that you hear Elvin and all those people just show it so beautifully in their playing. So how many of you have a touch with the drums? Anybody else play some drums? Even if, I tell my students, even if you get a ride cymbal and play along with records and get that physical sensation of, man, this is what this tempo feels like if I'm playing a ride cymbal beat, you know. And the other thing to get the triplet is the abakwa, which is an African rhythm. And can you walk with me? Can you do this with me? These are the dotted quarter notes, all right? So now we're talking about. Go ahead. Don't rush. Okay, so practice getting the feel of that. Then what he does, which is great, which when I first started doing this, I felt very uncoordinated, but it's good for you. It grounds you in what the triplet is. So if you go. What that's doing is showing you the middle note of the triplet, or in the 6/8 bar, you have two groups of three, right? So if you have to go, this is kind of what the bata players do in African music. They go, one, boom, beep, one, boom, beep, 3, 4, 5, 1, boom, beep, 3, 4, 1, 3, boom, beep, boom, boom, beep, boom, beep, boom, beep, boom, beep. Now that, when you speed it up, that's, you know, whether people were actively studying that, some might have been, some maybe didn't, but they heard that feeling around so much because the music was so much influenced by it. You hear Coltrane records, you hear Elvin playing. That triplet is all over the place. If you listen to what he's playing off the second part of that group of three, if you start to get that ingrained in you, I think not only does your rhythm get more sturdy, but when you blow, you know, have you ever played much over 6/8? Does it ever feel a little like when you play 4/4, you're kind of used to it, and then you play over a 6/8 tune, and you have to improvise over it? It's a little, at first, it's like, wait a minute, there's some other dynamic going here. So that's part of learning what that is. Like, I started really hitting the drums a lot more and doing independence exercises. Like where I'd have the bell pad and doing gang, 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 and I might play with the tom-toms, boom, beep, boom, beep, boom, beep, boom, beep. And then I got a deeper appreciation of what that triplet feel. And when you're walking your bass lines, it's going to make them, all those little fills you play that are triplety are going to be much more locked in if you really feel it in here. That's one thing. So can we play a little slower? So do it like that. Let me see what happens. No, that's too fast. Don't let it creep up. Okay, hang on a second. Felix, can you play that beat you were playing before, though? Yeah. And so play that rhythm and resist the thing of like surging forward and get deep into that. Because see what happens when you hear even when a great Afro-Cuban band plays a straighter rhythm like this, the triplet is still inside it. Because you have to be able to feel like that goes into the clave thing. If it's ga ga chiki ga ga chiki e ga ga chiki ga ga chiki ga 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 chiki ga ga and beat triplet 6/8 ga 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 ti. Also, singing helps, because that tells you whether you really feel the rhythm or not, or whether it's sort of just in here. And a lot of the stuff that I learned from a lot of these players in that kind of music, they sang to me. They didn't write it down necessarily. They sang it. So this is the rhythm for the bell pattern. This is that. This is that. And so I had to kind of take it in this way, and it was better for me, actually. Try it again. So. Okay, so check it out. All right, right away. That's that little syncopation. Yeah, if you go forward on it, it kind of like rocks the boat forward. So in order to get the feeling of that, play boom, dee ding, boom, boom, dee ding for a little bit. Okay, now play the groove you were playing before. And now try with the syncopation. Okay. Hang on one second. So now the thing is, when you comp, everything you do has to reinforce the rhythm. Sometimes I hear that you're thinking more about the harmony than the rhythm. So that's another place. I still want to hear more of a connection. Like for once, play it through without a solo, and just play with each other. But do it compositionally. Try to make something sound like your voice leading, but rhythmically, you're right in there with them. So you're part of the inner circle of the rhythm, not just playing on top of them. Does that make sense? Try that. And just stay in the straight eighth rhythm. Let me just hear how that goes. Even when you play the changes of the tune, stay there. Okay. So right away, you're actually ahead of him already. So you got to think of back. So it has to be another melody, but it has to be in the pocket with him. So think more rhythmically than, I know you're trying to figure out, how am I going to voice lead and everything, and that's important, of course, but the rhythm is even more important, because you could have a nice voicing, but if it's not laid in, then again, it's not strengthening the rhythm. And this is important to think. I think a lot of times, sometimes rhythm is the last thing we worry about. It should be the first thing we worry about, are concerned about. Do it again. Try it again. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so listen to Ahmad Jamal. Listen to players that, listen to Chucho Valdez, listen to Danilo. Listen to people who are rhythmically powerful piano players. You have Billy Childs right here too, by the way. Excuse me. So, but there's a compositional aspect that if you put your mind to it, your playing's going to expand a lot. All of you, if you think about that, when you play lines and when you play music together, the rhythmic part about it is really super important. Do you guys have any questions? I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. Anything, really, it doesn't matter. Yes.
When you delve into transcribing something, what's your process for absorbing that music? Because sometimes I feel like with my method of transcribing, or just I'll put it on paper, but I'm wondering from what you're talking about, how you learned a lot of things orally. What's your opinion?
When I was younger, at first I didn't write much down. And I was a completely ear player. I had to be conned into learning how to read music. And I had a teacher who made me learn how to read music, which thank God, because a lot of the people that I wound up playing with, including somebody who's sitting right over there who plays the piano, who write very interesting bass lines that are, if you can't read, no one can hear that before it happens. I don't care how good your ear is, you're not going to hear that. Yeah. So I was really stubborn. I didn't want to learn how to read. And so that was important. But to tell you, the good thing about it was I relied on my ear, and I wasn't Because later when I started transcribing things and sometimes writing them down, or sometimes when my students do it, there is that danger of past that, it's cool to write it down so you can analyze it a little bit, but what happens is a lot of times they'll write the transcription and they never really learn it to where they can play it with the recording and get, because here's the deal, it's not the notes, it's not just the notes that count, it's the inflection and the rhythmic emphasis and those little smeared things and the slides and the emotion that you think about that when you're playing by ear, because that's how you kind of memorize it, by listening to the expression, and then you find the notes. So it's a combination of both. I think maybe if you've done a lot of the other, try doing it without writing it down, where you have to memorize it all, which is not so easy if it's a long solo. But even if it's just 4 choruses, you can learn so much. To me, I learned how to, on the bass, to change the way I thought about technique completely by listening to horn players and trying to be expressive on my instrument. I had to find things because I heard the way they sounded. And I said, well, how come my stuff sounds kind of blockish and clunky compared to that? What am I going to do? So I kind of slurred and did things and tried to emulate what they did. I did it by ear, and nobody can really teach you that. They can guide you to the right places and give you the technique so that you can execute it, but actually feeling it and getting it from the source material with those hearts beating in the way they played, that can only be done with your ear. Yes?
I have a kind of more also bass-centric question regarding that, and that's just because I know what you mean. Like I transcribe a lot of horn players. Like I love Blue Mitchell's stuff.
Sure.
That kind of like has been really big inspiration for me, like orchestrationally too. But my question is like, do you feel like it's important to? He plays some things in the higher register, right? Do you feel like it's important to translate that on bass, or is it more important to do things comfortably, like how they are?
Take it down an octave if it sounds too strained. With our instrument, because of the string length thing, a lot of times, when the technical thing expanded, people got so into using the high register, and, all of us tried to go there, and we do it. But sometimes, we run into a thing where, if you got this much fingerboard left, it's not going to sustain unless you have the bow in your hand. So sometimes you have to kind of take it down an octave and just play it to where it feels right, and also get the harmonic idea and be able to play it anywhere that they were doing, That's why, being able to play in different keys and being able to play ideas in different keys is important, to think in different keys. On the bass, that's an issue on the wood bass, because D flat doesn't feel like C major, nor does F sharp, or, B major. These things require, and that's why, Rufus has been teaching with these incredible books for years too, but also the idea, he also studied with classical teachers too, and I did as well, and I got etude to death in college. And when I was a kid, I was like, man, why am I? And I'm glad, because, then you learn where everything is, and you have fingering schemes about how to deal with the neck, and say you want to play that Blue Mitchell line, but now you have 3 different fingerings you can find like that if you know the neck, and you know where everything is. It's a way to utilize the foundational stuff in a musical way and think, why am I learning it? The end game is so you can play more musically. So that the technical stuff goes out of the way. You're not so bound up by it that you don't have to think about it anymore. You can think purely of, I want to say, boop, 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 and you play that. Oh no, I have to shift, and now I have to play F sharp on the G string. Should I use my 4th finger? There's no time for that, We don't have time for that. So in a perfect world, we'll have, enough technique to get us through the expression that we want. But then there's always the thing, you're always hearing more than you can get to, usually. That's a good question. Yes?
I'm thinking, so in terms of Latin tunes like this, how would you sort of decide which approach you're going to take to the Latin part? Like, obviously, Israel Lopez is going to play something like Harlan Ray or different from Paul Chambers.
Right.
How
But have you ever heard that record, Inventions and Dimensions?
Is that,
Paul Chambers, it's Herbie's record. Paul Chambers playing. Herbie asked Miles, he said, man, I want to make a Latin record. Who should I get? Miles said, Paul Chambers. And he said, really? I thought I should get, Cachao. And he said, Paul Chambers. Paul plays some amazing bass on that record. It's incredible. He goes even a step further. He sounds like an African bass player on that record, not an Afro-Cuban bass player. He's playing all kind of stuff that's really hip. So I don't, when I was younger, I used to think it was important we have to decide, it's only this, and it has to be this name, and it has to be exactly. A lot of times now, I mean, when you get to play with amazing drummers, they start playing a beat, and you go, oh, this feels great, let me try that. And yes, I do study those rhythms. That's also, when you have, it's also a baião, a Brazilian rhythm. So you can also play it like that, which also, then if you listen to that music, you'll find that there's certain codes that you have to deal with for that. Like baião is usually a dominant chord with a +11 is kind of the vibe for a lot of those tunes. And they'll be playing something like Bodo, Bido, Bodo, do de, Bodo, Bido. So it's good to be familiar with some of the beautiful things that they've contributed to us, and instead of just sort of winging it. But there's room for experimentation too. So I might play it lean towards Cuba, or I might lean towards Brazil. It depends on what the drummer's playing, Yeah, and the thing you did with the side stick was very cool. That made me think to lean towards Cuba. So I go by, it's interactive. That's why I'm trying to get you guys to think, and from playing with a lot of the masters that really demand that kind of group interplay, especially Wayne Shorter, it's like, it's never about the me, it's about the we. Always about the we. And if you make space for each other, that's when the magic happens. When you get out of your own head and you're like thinking about, what am I doing, or what should I play? Just open your ears and see what's happening right next to you. It's powerful, yeah.
How do you, or how did you work on making sure you're always in the right headspace? Because those people that you really look up to, they can go stand in and play with a group of middle schoolers or something that really can't. They always elevate everybody else versus being in a headspace where you're too affected by those that might be around you or something, and making sure that you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I think you have to go in with more of a serving the music attitude in order to make a difference. Because if you come in too harsh, you're going to squash people's spirit. If you don't come in with anything, then you're not helping them. So if it's a young group, you definitely want to make them excited and feel great about playing. And if it's, and you guys, you've gotten to a level, so I'm leaning on you more than I would a high school group. You know what I mean? It's different. You have to find, and that's, Rufus, I met Rufus when I was 15, and he was so kind to me, and he encouraged me a lot. He heard where I was at, but he could have read a laundry list of the things that weren't happening, but he chose to encourage me and sort of, and I had other teachers do that too, and they were really helpful. My brother's a pastor. He said, when you're teaching people anything, there has to be the invitation and the challenge. If you don't have enough of either, the welcoming part, then when you challenge people, they're going to feel like, they're going to feel a little squashed, But if you don't do enough accountability in the challenge, then people don't grow. So I'm still learning how to teach. I've been teaching a long time, but I feel like it's way harder than playing because there's so much on the line. It's somebody's development, it's somebody's growth going forward, encouraging them to themselves and learn to be a good diagnostician of where they need to go, but also not beating themselves up all the time. It has to be a balance, because if you're not, I've been around people that don't think they need to learn anything, and therefore they never do. And then I also know what it's like to be beat myself up a lot because I'm kind of a perfectionist, and sometimes I have to kind of let it go. Okay, you didn't get everything on that song, but you went for it and you gave your best, and and I practice and I prepare like crazy, and I try to really give to the other people in the band. Sometimes I feel good about what happened. Sometimes I feel like I really didn't contribute enough, and it drives me crazy. But that's part of being an artist or a musician, is learning to be real with yourself and say, man, that's really not that great, instead of saying, oh, it's fine. And on the same token, having enough awareness to enjoy it and celebrate with each other, and not make it such we're going to play great, and it's like you're gritting your teeth and getting all upset with each other if somebody played the wrong change on the third chorus of your solo, I've been in situations like that too, where people just get too insular. They're worried about what they're playing, so that's why I'm trying to get you guys to get outward, I think everybody has to learn how to do it. I don't think anybody is immediately starts playing and they're perfect,
When you talk about interaction, some people use that analogy of they want the drummer to make them feel uncomfortable, so they respond in a different way, and to provoke them. So what are some things that you like being provoked by a horn player?
I think the whole thing is, sometimes when you tell people listen, they misinterpret it, because there's a you have to kind of have one ear on what you're doing so that you maintain that, so you can contribute, and the other ear outward. In terms of provoking, some people make too much of that, in my opinion. But yes, I think you have to. It's great when somebody challenges you with, I've played with these. Talk about provocative. All the piano players I've ever played with that were great are in some sense provocative. They're throwing voicings. I'll never forget when I first started playing with Chick. I never played with a piano player who threw so much rhythm and harmony at the same time at me. And I thought I was an improviser until I got in his band. All of a sudden, the comping is like, you're in the ring with Muhammad Ali, and you're just kind of covering up, and you're getting hit from all sides, and you can't even hang. And you're going, yeah, my solo sounds pretty lame. The comping is pretty amazing, but and I had to pony up, and this is that rhythmic thing again. You know how I had to pony up? Rhythm. I had to be clear and make a phrase happen and mean it, and not just noodle around the time, but play something and mean it. He demanded that, and he wasn't even saying anything to me. He was just showing me. He'd play a solo, and you go, wow, amazing. And the changes didn't sound so hard when he was playing them. Then you play, and you got Joe Louis over there, boom, bam, boom, and you're, and you're trying to play over these changes that are really hard, and you're trying to play melodies. So that's what I mean about rhythmically going, holding yourself to another standard. I had to deal with that. Billy and I used to play with Freddie Hubbard. Sometimes he'd call tempos that were just, and he'd proceed to play the most incredible solos you ever heard, and you wouldn't want him to stop, even though you're like, oh, wow. It's going, and he would just be blowing it. I felt like, man, can I rewind and hear that again? What was that, Why wasn't I recording? We didn't have these phones with, voice memo recorders in them. But so that kind of thing, the rhythmic thing, I probably got off topic. I hope I answered some of what you asked, but yeah.
So you're speaking about all these different stylistic choices, when we started with the Ornette stuff and then the Latin type stuff. What do you think is a more effective method of learning that type of stuff? Dropping everything and immersing yourself in it for a little while, or slowly building up over time, practice?
Well, I think sometimes now with the whole YouTube generation, everybody thinks you got to know everything right now. And the only way to practice all these things is to spread it out over a week. You can't do all this every day. So if there's a style that you're really interested in that you don't know much about, man, dive in those records and then start asking people that play that in a way that you think is they own it, and go and find the information. Seek people out. I was always bugging people. I used to, just ask a lot of questions, And that's the way to do it. But listening to the recordings and listening, because the recordings are where the emotional depth and all that comes in. If you pick up a book and it says, yeah, play the Cascara rhythm on the ride cymbal, and it's written out. But then you hear somebody go, bing, bing, boom, and then it's like, wow. You know, I just heard it now. I kind of can sing it back, and I don't have to read it in the book. I mean, not the book, I studied a lot too, but I think that visceral thing of tasting it and touching it and doing it physically with your body on the cymbal is way better than reading about it. Reading about it, maybe you learn it from there, but then you got to go to the records. So is there a style when you think about it, like right now, that you really like, that you hear people do?
Well, that I hear that I can't do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love bossa nova.
Great. Get Elise and Tom. Get those amazing records with Jobim playing piano with Ron, and I mean, it's incredible. There's, you know, all these guys in New York too. There's, you know, Trio de Paz and all the, you know, you ever heard of them? It's Duduca Fonseca, who plays with Rufus also. Duduca and Romero and the great Nelson Mata on bass. There's a lot of great Brazilian records. What happened to me was I was sort of adopted and kidnapped by all the Brazilians when I was about 23. They started, I played with one, and then they told somebody else, hey, this kid and then Ayrton was the first one. He brought me to his house and said, okay, this is the way you really play samba. None of this ding, 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 no. This, you know, and he took me through some styles that day in his house. Said, this is the way you do it. That's invaluable. I mean, that's like, I couldn't have learned that in a book. And at that point in time, it wasn't in any books. Now that stuff gets written down. But you know, to play with him, and he's playing the rhythm with you, then you go play the same part that he taught you with another drummer who isn't him, and it doesn't sound right. You know, and you're like, wait a minute. I was playing half notes with him, and it was grooving because he owns it, and he's giving you a piece of it. You know, so you got to go and try to find people and ask them. I mean, this is an amazing thing you have here. You have all these guys that you can ask questions to who really are inspirational to me too. You know, you know, I think it's incredible. So take advantage. Ask a lot of questions. Yeah.
I actually have like a pedagogical question, like about teaching too, and like, because you've obviously like done a lot of workshops, you've worked with a lot of people, kids, I'm sure too, and I was just wondering, like, have you given any thought or to how you identify how people learn and how they learn this music, and do you think there's like varying ways that people learn?
Privately, I've noticed that with my students. I mean, in a situation like this, I don't know you well enough to know how you learn, but that's the thing that's continually challenging and interesting to me over the years. Because it's, you know, when I started classical bass, I had some teachers that kind of brought everybody in a way through a thing, a system, and everybody had to pass through all those checkpoints, you know. Sometimes with my students, I notice there's different ways in with each of them. Like there's a different door in to unlock and get them excited and motivated. Not everybody's the same, so yeah, I think you have to try to bring the foundational stuff and bring the things that you feel are non-negotiables. But sometimes I might have to teach them in a different way to wake somebody's interest, you know. Like sometimes now, I was talking to Rufus about it, it seems like a lot of my students, I'm trying to get them to play more downbeats and roots, you know, and but also be able to free up the music, but also play two-feel. The two-feel is such a foundational thing that a lot of people don't seem to gravitate towards now. And sometimes with my students, you know, it's interesting that they want to break up things and stuff, but two-feel is the original how to break up the time. You know, it's incredible. And it's so well documented on all these records. Guys really, you know, changing the world with their two-beat stuff, you know. So, yes, I think people do sometimes learn in different ways. You know, sometimes there's a general flow. You might have an ensemble where everybody's kind of, they can receive it in a way, in a group way, but sometimes one individual maybe isn't getting it that way, and you have to sort of like try to be sensitive enough to find out what it is, But it also sometimes it's a timing thing. Sometimes I remember people telling me things when I was younger and I didn't get it, and then later on, bing, it's like, oh yeah. Victor Feldman told me once about my note length. He said, because I was listening to all my favorite guys, and Rufus Ron, Ray, Paul Chambers, Charlie Hayden, Dave Holland, everybody, and note length. I wasn't really peeping somehow the space they were putting, even though they had long, sustained, beautiful, thick tone, and the notes were connected. There was a little space in between there that kind of made a hump go. And I didn't quite have that yet. And Victor Feldman told me, you might put a little more space at the end of your notes. And I was very respectful. And inside my head, it was like, what's he talking about? I hear these guys, and it's got this big thing. It's all connected to me. I wasn't able to hear yet that little space. And then years later, I realized I was walking, and I had somehow learned it somehow. And I realized I was doing it, and I went, oh, no, that's what he meant. And I just wasn't ready. It took me a while to catch up. Yeah.
You've obviously played with some very strong personalities of players. So how did you work on that and being exposed to Freddie Hubbard and Chick and whatnot, and then balancing what you felt was your own personal voice and getting really in touch with what you wanted to sound like, what you wanted to do, and all that?
When I was playing with Freddie, I really wasn't thinking about myself much. I was thinking about, how am I going to hang with this guy? How am I going to play and have that sustained energy that he demands? And how am I going to make it feel like it should, like all those great records he made? And, so I wasn't really thinking about my personal voice in that band. Billy can tell you, man, we were just trying to hang with him. He was burning. And that was a great period, early 80s. He was on fire. So creative, so powerful, very consistent too. I didn't play with him as much as Billy did, but those instances when I did play with him, I still remember them. And so that was more of a thing where I was just trying to do the best job I could and serve what his vision was. I wasn't thinking, I thought if I get a chance to do, because he would let me play and stuff, but some of those tunes were not easy, One of Another Kind or whatever. They were up. So he would wait until I was playing and then start screaming Brooklyn, because that's where I'm from. He liked that I was from Brooklyn, so he used to mess with me. He would yell, Brooklyn! I was trying to play on One of Another, because all this stuff, and I'm almost laughing because he's over there messing with me, But really, it was just, when you listen to somebody's records and you're a hero, and then all of a sudden you're up there and you're playing, I wasn't really focused on myself. I was trying to figure out how to be a really good bass player in that band, But then, with Chick, I was in his band for decades. So that became a thing where, okay, he's asking me, and he gave me all this room to create something inside and help him develop all these different musics that we played. He was very open, like he would give you stuff that was very challenging, but then there was a lot of room to create, and he wanted my input. He wanted, me to create, and he gave me a lot of space to improvise too, which was a blessing and a curse, again, because you had to follow him. And so, you start to get a little stronger and you think, okay, I'm starting to understand this tune now. And then he plays a solo that's like, how in the heck, how did that happen? It's not fair. Of course, piano players can do something we can't do too. They can change all the insides of the chord qualities while they're playing, while the roots are the same. Herbie does that like crazy too, and you'll be playing, he'll be playing a solo, and you're like, wow. He just completely reharmonized the whole tune. Many times over as the choruses roll by. And you go, wow, that's something. And you feel like, what am I doing? Oh. I don't want to play. So, but yeah, with Chick, I did have a chance to have an impact because, helping shape the music, he gave us a lot of skin in the game in those groups. So then I did have kind of a thought like, well, at first it was daunting because he had played with so many great bass players. Like, I didn't want to sound like I was just trying to be a clone of any number of guys that he played with. You name it. He played with a lot of great guys. So then it was like, okay, well, what's my viewpoint? He's asking me to have a viewpoint now. So what do I do? So I sort of found it as I went along, But I was always thinking about first how to set everybody up. That's kind of a bass player mentality that we need to have. We need to make everybody else sound good. And because we're in the rhythm section, that's our first job, number one. So, but he was such a great time player that I was never at a loss for ideas because he was always, and we had great drummers too. So yeah, I had a chance to develop, well, how do I see myself in this group? I've been in the group for 10 years or whatever. It was a lot of playing. Tours of 2 months at a time. So you start to live together. Same with Wayne's group. Wayne gave us so much freedom, yet he had a concept that he didn't even have to talk about. He played it, and you went, oh, I see. So then you do how you think about it because you're in a group. When you're in a group, and it's a set group for that long, you can't help but grow, and you become who you're supposed to be for that band. Because you're playing with people who are listening, and everybody's, they live together. It's a family. That goes a long way. I know some people say, well, yeah, man, but this guy hated him and they played great together. I don't know. I haven't been in many bands like that. So I don't have that experience.
Can you talk, when you guys first had that band together with Wayne, with like Brian and Perez, what was the first things you guys were doing? Were you just like talking about the conceptual things that you were going to try and approach with it or that? Or how did you get to where
I was lucky because I had been with him way before that. I met him in '86, and I recorded with him in '87. And here and there, he would call, even when I was still playing with Chick regularly, he would call, and whenever I could, I would drop whatever I was doing and go. But then after I left Chick, and then he called again, and he said, yeah, I'm thinking of, I said, yes. Whatever, So I had been around him, and I was used to the way he spoke. But people think he always speaks in metaphor, and he doesn't. Sometimes he speaks very plainly. So when the other guys are 10 years younger than me, when they came in and started playing with him, they were freaked out because, as I was, but I'd been around him, so I was used to it. We were really close by then. They were all concerned about, because he was trying to do this thing where he was trying to blur the line between when we played the written music and when we improvised. But he wanted the improvisation to be compositional. So when we were playing, we were developing themes, we were using rhythmic motifs, we were using harmonic things, we were creating chord progressions, we were doing stuff based on, we're going to build something together right now, from nothing. That's what Wayne wanted, that he called it zero gravity. So at first, they were freaking out, thinking, oh my God, does he like it? Well, what's happening, I said, don't worry, he likes it, he keeps bringing new music. He never brought those bags of music in before, because I would go in and out of these bands where they were just different people kind of thrown together. It wasn't a straight, consistent band. So when Brian and Danilo got in there, then I saw a light go in his eye, and he started bringing stuff. The first gig I think we did was the first time I got to play some old tunes with him. He wouldn't do that with some of the other groups. We maybe played, what did we play? We got him to play, I don't remember. I can't even remember that name. There's so millions of them. ESP. Yeah, we played ESP. We conned him into it with this other band. He played it. Well, Go we used to play. That was funny. Okay, so Go. We were trying to get him to play some tunes because he didn't want to go like Miles. All the children of Miles, they never go backwards. They only go forwards. They don't want to play anything they did before because that was Miles's thing, going forward. So Wayne didn't want to play any old tunes, so we tricked him into playing Go because he hinted at it one night. So I was in Paris I couldn't find Schizophrenia. I think it's on Schizophrenia. And I saw Beasley was there, and he had it, and I said, I'm taking this record, you know. And I went back to my room, and I even transcribed the front with all the and man, we worked on it, and then Danilo came, and we did it, we got it all worked out, and then we just started playing it, and then he liked it, and we played it, we started playing it. And then we had been playing it for a while, and he added this tag with all these changes. It was amazing, actually. So he felt better about it if he could add something new to it. And how can you argue with that? He's a genius, straight up. So he created this thing that he wanted to do, and then he empowered us to do it. Like, he encouraged us to do it. He said, no, come on. He'd say, let's go make a movie. Let's go out there. And he wanted to create something. And so those guys kind of, after a while, I tried to reassure them. I said, man, he likes it. Don't worry. And then they got excited, and then, of course, they did what they did. And because they're all composers in that band. So everybody is invested in orchestration. And that's the only way that music would work. But here's the misconception. Some young players will come and say, oh yeah, but you guys play so loose. There's a lot of grooves that Brian and I are playing. There's a lot of downbeats. There's a lot of groove. And yes, maybe Danilo and Wayne are creating these otherworldly things over the top of it. But there's a lot of foundational elements in that music. It's not just kind of whatever. It's not like sometimes when you hear somebody play free music and everybody just goes dense. And it's just, you know, it's like, and that's an effect. It's a different kind of thing. I remember, you know, people ask Wayne that. He doesn't even like that music. It's not like he's making a value judgment. He just doesn't care for it. He wanted to play what Danilo coined as compromised music. He wanted to have really compositional but totally improvised. And then people don't know the difference when we're playing off the page, because anybody can cue any of the tunes that we have in the book at any time. So somebody would hint at something, and then we'd go like a school of fish in there for a while. Sometimes Wayne would play with us and start hinting at 3 things at the same time, and he was darting in between them. And we were trying to figure out, well, should we go or we stay? And then, you know, that kind of stuff. But he made it work. I think you had one, yeah.
Yeah, in that same vein, I listened to a lot of like the Chick Corea recordings. So what was kind of the ratio between orchestration or like composition and improvisation in that type of music?
His music is, you know, he's a very prolific composer, so he brings in 8 million songs, and you play through them, and they sound great. And then he's really open about how the approach. Sometimes he has. I found that being a bass player, I had more freedom than the drummers do. He was more directive towards the drummers, and we developed into a relationship. You know, he taught me a lot of stuff, and that music was, you know, there's a lot more. You know, he's got a lot of arrangements, you know, with lines and things that we would play together. Or in the trio, he does really masterful arrangements of standards too. Like his arrangement on, one of my favorites is That Old Feeling. He has a really hip arrangement of that. I mean, he had always had that knack, and I think he, like the people that he looked up to, like he loved Benny Golson and Cedar Walton, and he loved Horace Silver a lot. So if you hear those records, Horace Silver always had slick arrangements. Wayne even commented about, you know, he liked certain people like that, and he singled out Horace and also Benny for the way they arranged their hip arrangements of things. So Chick has that kind of thing that he's into. And then, of course, he writes other stuff that's very expansive. If you've ever heard some of the, you know, the classical music in there, it's like, wow. 10 minutes, 6 minutes. We have time for a couple more questions, I think. How about out there? Anybody have any questions? Yes.
John, it seems like everybody has their own definition of pocket. I'm interested in yours, please.
Oh boy. The pocket for every tune is different. I mean, you know, tempos dictate that too. You know, if you're down here, you know, the whole idea is to have a wide beat I think that's that has forward motion, but that's not nervous. I mean, I listen to a lot of bass players, and they seem to have that feeling like they're going somewhere. It's a difference between walking in place or walking somewhere. That's the only way I can describe it. I mean, people try to describe what grooving is and what the pocket is, and it's, you know, I forget that quote. Somebody said, talking about music is like dancing about, I think this yeah. It's difficult, but one thing's for sure. Rufus said something I'll never forget when I was young. He said to me, time is about the swing and the groove. Time is about agreement. If you can't agree on it, there's no pocket. So people with good rhythm, when they agree on where it is, can make something happen. You know? You remember you said that? That's a great one. I've been using it for years. It is agreement, because sometimes when people approach the pocket, they say, well, it's mine. I'm putting it here, and it's my way or the highway. That doesn't work. The only one who got who got away with that was Ray Brown. but you know, in general, the bass player and the drummer have to really hook up. And the thing is, it can't be one person propping up the other person. They both have to feel where that is and have great time. And also, my thing about it is that I like drummers that have a wide beat and bass players that have a wide beat, so it doesn't sound like it's constricted or restricted or nervous or tense. It's insistent, but it's kind of like relaxed on top or something. I don't know. For some grooves. Then there are other grooves where you try to lay back as far as you can without dragging. If you play in a reggae band, that's the game. You know, and a lot of funk music is the opposite. When you're playing 4/4, I feel like you have to keep it, it's like juggling. You got to keep the balls in the air or you're bouncing a basketball. But in funk music, a lot of times, the cardinal sin is to rush. You ever listen to the Meters, New Orleans band? Man, it's funky. They have a way of, it's going backwards and forwards at the same time and sideways, you know. Dr. John just passed. He was a giant of that music, too. Another question. We're almost done, aren't we? We're going to go with the bass player.
So I think a common thing that I still deal with in improvising and like my studies is just getting away from the tonal center. Meaning like the root basically.
Yeah.
And like sometimes I feel like I want more exercises, to know more exercises, to kind of practice improvising and not being all centered around the root. My point is, how did you go about that? Like, do you have a particular exercise that you?
I think people started showing me about pedaling off the fourth and off the fifth. That was the first thing that kind of opened up some things to me, and that's very basic building blocks of music. But sometimes a well-placed pedal can sound like amazing, just from putting the fourth or the fifth. Also, sequential playing. Creating sequences that maybe are outside the harmony that move, The famous one, like on rhythm changes, it's in B flat, but you start on G flat and you go 1, 4, 5. Yeah, I stole that from I think Ron Carter I stole that from. You have to give your sources. It's not okay to just steal them. Everybody steals, but you got to give credit where credit is due. That's one. You can do things like move in minor thirds. You can use devices that take people somewhere so that they feel a structural power in it, but it's open. Yet it's going somewhere because it has some kind of thought behind it or a feeling of, I want to go here. And you're communicating it strongly. That kind of thing goes a long way if you start fooling with those things. A lot of it I did by ear. I heard so many records and I heard them do things, and I said, well, what is that? And I try to, well, yeah, he's playing a fifth from the root of the fourth, or he's pedaling over here, or he's playing a sequence, or that kind of thing. Yeah.
Let's thank John.
Thank you. Thank you. These guys too. Thank you. Fun. Thank you. Thank you very much.
This evening is the Harlem String Quartet and Mr. Patitucci right here. 6 o'clock, correct?
Is it really? Wow. Woo. I got a rehearsal and a gig now.
Let's thank him again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys.